But as Ash was mentioning, I'm very excited for this conversation. And this series of leadership conversations really allow the youth leaders of the PUB family to learn about leadership from different points of view and how to apply it in different areas of their professional career. So I think this will be a very, very interesting session. I will hand it over to Ash so he can introduce the session. And from that, we will go over a series of questions prepared by the youth.
Sounds good.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to start by saying we're so delighted to welcome you, Mr. Kini. Thank you very, very much for being here with us, for allowing us to spend this time together to hear your voice and be inspired. And I'd also like to convey my warmest welcome to everyone to the PUB Leadership Conversations, a tribute to our chief mentor. This project aims to strengthen youth leadership and explore tactics that empower the youth to take action and tackle the most pressing environmental issues faced globally. We are conducting a series of conversations on leadership strategies, recommendations, reflections, and examples, each focused on global leadership and a different pressing environmental issue. This initiative is designed to focus on serving as a tribute to our chief mentor, late Dr. R.K. Pachauri. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Venkatesh Kini, who is a dear friend and colleague of Dr. Pachauri and has interacted with him extensively. And also, Mr. Kini is co-founder of Ubuntu, an environmental solutions platform. We're very excited to hear more about the amazing things that you have done, your inspiration to lead this field, to set up Ubuntu, and also to guide so many other organizations to sustaining sustainable activity, and pathways. So I just want to say a very warm welcome, Mr. Kini. Thank you very much once again for being here with us and for sharing your voice and experience. With that, I'd like to hand over to Anna, who'll take it from here and introduce you. And we're delighted to share your experience with everybody here in the room and as well as via YouTube. So thank you very much and a warm welcome. Over to you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ash, and thank you, Mr. Kini, for being here. I will now go ahead and introduce our speaker for the session. Mr. Kini is an entrepreneur, environmentalist, coach, and mentor. He's a global business leader with over 30 years of experience in marketing, sales, and general management across industries in emerging and developed markets. Strong grounding in finance and operation. He has launched products in 45 countries, participated in M&A deals worth over 5 million from negotiation to integration, and led significant innovations from concept to execution. I think this session will be very, very exciting because many of the youth leaders we have here are interested in going into the sector of sustainable companies and entrepreneurship and innovation. So I think this will be very interesting. And I will hand over to Ash for the very first question of the session.
Thank you. That's absolutely true. I think as Mr. Kini gets to know members of the PUB family here, there's a number of people who are very creatively engaged in entrepreneurship, enterprise, and utilizing technologies and creative means to lead action. So very excited about the conversation, and I'd love to start by asking you, Mr. Kini, if you could share what, in your view, leadership within this field means, and in the context of the work that you lead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You start with the most, I would say, challenging question. When we talk about the field of sustainability, there are two sides to it. One is identifying, understanding, and raising awareness about the problem. Climate is changing. There are hundreds of thousands of researchers and scientists that are measuring the impact of humanity on the planet and pointing out that we are warming the planet, we are damaging biodiversity and stuff like that. So that's one side of the picture. then there are what I would call the nonprofits and the activists who amplify the warnings that humanity needs to heed. And then what I call the ecopreneurs. The ecopreneurs are the ones who are solving these problems. They're the ones creating technologies, innovations. They're creating, I would say, new materials, new processes, everything that changes the way we do business from extracting resources from the planet, generating waste and causing harm, to being more sustainable and more gentle to the planet. So leadership, you can choose to be a leader in any of these three fields, right? Identifying the problem, amplifying the problem, or solving the problem. And where you focus on depends on your skills, your passion, and also the extent to which you need to, your financial situation, because not all of these will pay you a living.
That is so true, Mr. Kini, and thank you for summing it up so well. I was thinking as you were speaking that we have a number of people focused on different arenas, like you pointed out, the three key streams, even within the pop family, and I think that's absolutely true. I think it's a matter of forte, interest, and capability, financially and otherwise. So this is very, very interesting, and I like to sort of keep that perspective as we interact more and learn more about the things that a lot of young people are doing. Many of them are increasingly interested in entrepreneurship, identifying solutions, and others are more inclined toward different alternative dimensions of this work. But I think this is really fascinating to have this perspective, and I just want to say thank you very much. I think as we spend more time together here, you'll hear sort of the three are in the room with us here today. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you so much for that great question and that great answer, Mr. Kini. I agree with Dr. Ash. I think as we continue speaking, you'll see that we have youth focused on each one of these areas here in the call. Now I would like to hand it over to Alejandra Fragoso, who is joining us from Mexico, and she will be asking the next question.
Thank you so much, Sana. Yeah, I want to ask, for those who are just learning about Ubuntu, could you please tell us more about it and what motivated you to found this company?
So Ubuntu is what we call an environmental solutions platform. What we do is we understand problems that large corporations face around sustainability in the environment. And then we help find them solutions or help create solutions for them by partnering with entrepreneurs and ecopreneurs and innovators from around the world. And we conduct pilots. In some cases, we help the companies run procurement processes that integrate these solutions into their business. So you could call us a solutions platform.
Great, thank you so much. That's really interesting that you partner the companies who want to do something with the ecopreneurs who have the innovations. When I first read about it, I thought you created the innovations, but it's great that you are this bridge between what people need and what exists. And I will go ahead with the next question. I think this concept is really interesting and can really propel companies into adopting sustainable solutions. But I think an important aspect of actually the companies really wanting to change and the people accepting that this is a positive change and they're doing it in order to help the world is the effective communications of the solutions that are being implemented. So I wanted to ask you how you promote this effective communication of the companies who are changing.
Thanks, great question, Anna. So one of the things we've realized is that although there are hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs and innovators with solutions in this world, Often the solution is not a perfect answer to the problem that a company is facing, right? So there are a lot of unique features. For every company's problem, you need to tailor a solution to their needs. Sometimes the solution can come from a single supplier. Sometimes the solution requires partnerships between multiple suppliers to create an ecosystem solution. And sometimes you need to change, modify, or make significant changes to a solution in order for it to work. So there are two parts to it. One is how do solution owners make themselves known or visible to the solution seekers at the right time in the right context. I may have a problem today. I need to make sure that when I have a problem and I'm looking for a solution, I find the right solution owner at the right time. And that's the biggest challenge. It's not just, I mean, it's easy to do Google searches, but you often can't find the right solutions through Google. It's easy to even go to a database, but there are millions and millions of solutions on databases. How do you know which is the right one for you? So that matchmaking between the right solution and the right solution and the solution seeker at the right time requires a very well-designed summary of a solution that explains exactly how it solves a problem. And that's what we do. We create listings on Ubuntu through an editorial team using a standard format that makes it easy for a solution seeker to figure out in 2 minutes whether the solution is right for them or not. Often people create websites for their solutions, or they create big brochures and big presentations. No one has the time. If I'm a solution seeker and I'm a senior person in the R&D department of a big company, right, I get bombarded all the time by thousands of people saying, hey, I want to talk to you, or I have a solution for you. What I need is somebody to filter that and to present to me in very simple summarized format, easy to read summaries. This might be a solution to your problem. Would you like to talk to them? And that's what we do. We create that. It's almost like creating a profile on LinkedIn. You create a profile on LinkedIn. It's a summary of your life, of your professional life. And we're kind of creating a LinkedIn profile for solutions.
Thank you so much. I really like the way you described it, and I think this made it much more clear how it works. I think it'll be very interesting to understand a bit further on how solutions can be part of your platform, and it'll be very interesting to keep talking about that. But before I get into that, I would like to hand it over to Michelle, who's joining us from the United States, because she will be asking the next question.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, Mr. Kini. Thank you so much for being here. My question is, how can we motivate smaller companies to grow with sustainability concepts embedded in their values?
Thanks, Michelle. That's actually a difficult question, because often the sustainability or sustainable innovation requires risk-taking. It requires some sacrifices initially of cost, or sacrifices in the form of functionality. Because I mean, we are all familiar with electric cars and Tesla, and the early adopters of Tesla had to deal with all kinds of problems, range issues, some quality issues, some supply chain and servicing issues. But the early adopters are the ones who enabled Tesla to build their business, learn, improve, and today it's a leader in electric vehicles. The same thing applies to any sustainable technology. The early adopters are the ones who have to help that technology prove itself, scale, become economically viable. And that should not be the responsibility of small companies. If there's a small company that has limited resources, they need to follow the big companies who are the ones who have to make that investment, who are the ones who have to take that risk, because they have the resources and they can afford to take $1 million risk on a new technology. Whereas a small company, to take $1 million risk on a new technology, it could make or break their business. So every company needs to think sustainability from day one, whether they're a small or a large company. But the smaller companies should focus on proven technologies that are more sustainable and that fit their business model and are the right price for them. The big companies are the ones who should take the risk.
Thank you for highlighting some of the barriers to integrating sustainability and then also sharing some strategies for what smaller companies, can actually do and what's feasible. I appreciate it. I'm going to pass it back to Anna.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that question, and Mr. Kini for the answer. I think that's a very interesting and very insightful answer that you gave, because it's true, there's bigger companies that can really take that risk, and smaller companies, if they adopt a solution that is not proven yet, it's a bigger risk and it can make it or break them. It's kind of similar to bigger versus smaller countries. This big debate of how bigger countries should help smaller countries and things. So it's interesting to see how that reflects in the business world. I would now like to hand it over to Edgar, who will be asking the next question.
Hi, Mr. Kini, can you hear me?
Hi, Edgar.
Yep. Okay. It's very nice to meet you. And also, I have really two questions to ask. The first one will be, how can we as a society promote that all companies adopt these behaviors and values? I'm referring to the ones that you have been telling us in this entire conversation. And also, how can we communicate to companies that responsible and sustainable consumption is one of our main factors when making decisions?
So if I want to make sure I've understood the question. The first one is, how can we make large companies more focused on sustainability? And the second one is, how do we send them, how do we make decisions with regard to sustainability around companies? Is that your question?
Yeah. The first one was how we can, as a society, promote that all the companies adopt these behaviors and values.
Okay. And when you say we, are you referring to we as consumers or we as pop movement?
As a society.
As society. Okay. So I think both those questions can be answered in one way, which is we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate ourselves as society about responsible consumption. Okay. Ultimately, every company on the planet exists to serve a consumer, or they exist to serve another company that exists to serve a consumer, right? So somebody is ultimately buying, and that somebody is us. When we are on this video call, we're consuming bandwidth. That's consuming electricity, and that's causing climate change, right? So every action that we take as consumers is creating an environmental footprint. What we need to do is first understand what is our footprint. Where does our footprint and our planetary footprint come from? How can we reduce it or compensate for it where you can't reduce it, right? You're going to use energy, and not all of that energy is going to come from sustainable sources. So you have to compensate for your energy consumption that's not renewable. So educate ourselves. Second, be willing to make, I wouldn't say sacrifices, but choices that are not easy and not always most comfortable. I'll give an example. I have stopped buying bottled water. I always carry a reusable bottle of water with me everywhere I go, right? As an individual, it doesn't make a big difference to the planet. It doesn't make a big difference to the companies. But if all of us on this call and all of us listening to this were to start using reusable bottles, right? We would then send a message that bottled water is only needed in situations where you can't find a reusable bottle or you don't have a reusable bottle. It's more of an indulgence, luxury, or a choice that you make. All these little choices that we make are the ones that are going to send a message to all these companies that they need to make more sustainable choices. When we see a company these days, if you were to go into a store, and I believe Amazon is doing this and Target is doing this, you see labels that say this company is net zero, right? If you see two products and one product has a sustainability message on it, right? Pick that. It may not be the cheapest, it may not be the best, but if you start making choices that reward companies for being more sustainable, that will force change. However, I want to say out here is that doesn't mean that we should all sacrifice our wallets and our comforts so that companies can be more sustainable. It is responsibility of companies to figure out how to serve our needs without us having to sacrifice, right, in a way that's better for the planet. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think my philosophy here is, as consumers make the right choices, you'll force companies to make the right choices.
Thank you so much. It was perfect. There are like a very beautiful answer, and also useful. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Edgar, for that great question, and Mr. Kini for that great answer. I think it's so interesting that we sometimes take for granted, or we don't really think about how we as consumers shape what companies will offer, right? So it's important. For example, here in Mexico, Uber Eats started putting this option where you can mark if it's sustainable packaging. So that way now you can filter whenever you want to get food, you can filter according to the type of packaging you want to get. So now more companies are changing to sustainable packaging. So that'll be that's very, very interesting. Komal, I see that you've messaged me. I don't know if you would like to take that question. If so, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. Sir, I would like to ask, like, how should we encourage sustainable, innovative ideas through our mentorship? Like with the POP movement, we provide capacity building and mentorship to young people. So how should we proceed? And we have a network in 120 plus countries. So I wanted to ask, like, how should we encourage and how should we proceed to encourage more people so that they can come up with more sustainable and more innovative ideas?
Well, for any sustainability entrepreneur or innovator, there are two things they need. Actually, three things they need. So let me clarify. It's three. One is funding. They need money, most important. Then they need a market. They need customers, and they need talent, right? The POP movement today, you're not a funding entity, and you're not the buyers of the product. You're not most entrepreneurs have products that require either end consumers, which are few, but more likely to be another business, right? And so you're not the B2B buyers. And the POP movement is not large enough to be a consumer movement in order to make a significant difference to the consumer product side of. But what you are is an amazing source of talent. You're an amazing source of talent. You have got members in 120 countries who are passionate about sustainability, that are young, that are qualified, talented. How are you helping through your mentorship, find the right talent for them? And through your networks, if you could help, and I'm speaking for myself, today we're expanding, we're hiring, and we would love to hire people, right? So if there was a way that I could post jobs through POP, I would love to do it, because you're a perfect target audience for my talent needs. So I would say, think of talent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that question, Komal. I think it's really interesting to see it, to see all these concepts landed now on what we're doing in POP. So I think it was very interesting that you asked that, and that's an amazing offer. It'd be great to continue this this relationship between POP and Ubuntu and see how we can help link the youth with different solutions. we do have more time. I don't know if, for example, Trisha, Andres, Ivan, or Kevin would like to ask any additional questions. In the meantime, while they think of any questions, I wanted to ask specifically about the circular economy. So maybe we could talk about how we can promote the circular economy at a more global scale, because we know this concept has emerged for a few years now and it's being adopted in smaller communities, but how can we make it the rule, to call it this way, around the world?
Great, thanks, Anna. So circular economy, and I want to now clarify, circular economy is actually an ideal, but a theoretical ideal. But in practical terms, it's impossible because there'll always be leakage along the way. So there's no perfect circular system. There's always going to be 1, 5, 10, 15, 20% leakage because of conversion, energy conversion costs, and all kinds of other things that result in, if you start with 100 units of raw material, by the time you're done with production, consumption, recovery, recycling, and then reuse, right? Yeah. You've lost some material or some energy or something else along the way. But that being said, it's the second thing that needs to be clarified around this point about circular economy is not everything can and should be circular. Okay, so I'll give an example. And again, something that you're probably familiar with. If you buy a beverage today, I think most of you are going to try to reduce your plastic consumption. So you probably won't want to buy a beverage in plastic. Yeah. But plastic is actually the lowest environmental footprint from a climate perspective and a water use and a land use perspective, right? So plastic has benefits. But the disadvantage is that plastic, when littered, pollutes the environment. And unfortunately, in the emerging markets, it's a big source of litter. And it damages ocean ecosystems. It becomes microplastics, and that's a problem. So the problem is not with plastics, the material. The problem is the end of life of plastics. Now, if you recycle plastics, when you recycle plastics, it's possible to recycle it a couple of times, but after a while, the integrity of the plastic becomes bad. So plastic is not infinitely recyclable. It has to eventually be downcycled or the open loop cycled, which goes into making plastic timber, plastic furniture, plastic whatever, which is low value end of life, and eventually it has to be discarded. You take, on the other hand, glass. Glass is, if you buy a glass bottle, you can recycle it. You can possibly recycle it infinitely. The problem with that is when you recycle glass, you're only saving 25% of the energy in recycling. And often the reverse logistics of glass recycling uses so much energy that you actually are climate negative when you recycle glass sometimes, which is why in many parts of the world, glass doesn't get recycled much. And then glass also is heavier and more carbon intensive to produce. And then when you ship it, it uses up more weight. And then finally, you take aluminum. You take a can and you recycle that. When you recycle cans, you're saving 95% of the energy in the recycling process. So recycling cans is a great thing. So a long way of saying circular economy is not the right answer for every situation. In countries where there's very good waste management, plastic may be the answer. In countries where there's very poor waste management, returnable, reusable glass may be the answer. And in countries where people can afford higher price for packaging, aluminum cans may be the answer. So it's a far more complex issue than simply circular economy. It's more about choosing the right circularity solution for the right local context. And that's not an easy thing for consumers to do. It's what policymakers need to do.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting because I think sometimes it's not very common for just in general, when we talk about sustainability, to talk about context. And I think it's so important because, as you say, maybe in Sweden, that they have a really great recycling logistics, it's better to use, for example, maybe plastics that have a lower carbon footprint. But in Mexico, where I'm located, the recycling logistic is not very good, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to use plastic. So I think that was very, very interesting. I will hand it over to Andres, who raised his hand, and then to Ivan.
Yeah, and I see that someone sent a question on the chat, so I can answer that also. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
we'll go to Andres first, and we can answer the question in the chat. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Andres?
We can't hear you. I think there's...
Andres, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe Ivan can ask while Andres fixes his audio. Andres, sorry, hermano Ivan.
Thank you so much. And okay, so this is more like a personal question. There are many people that, I mean, you have done so much and your experience is really, really interesting for me. So I think there are many people that can learn a lot from you. So my question is, which is the most important lesson that you have learned through your vast professional experience?
Oh, that's a thank you for the question, though I must say that's a very difficult one. I guess what is the most important lesson also depends on the context of what you're applying it to. Personally, my experience so far is there's no substitute for hard work, right? All of us are born with great abilities and great not all of us are born with the right opportunities. We're not always born in the right place at the right time, in the right circumstance. But you can overcome any obstacle. You can overcome any hurdle simply through hard work and perseverance, right? And if I were to say, one takeaway for this whole team, life is not going to be easy, but enjoy it, and more importantly, work hard, and you'll achieve your dreams.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ivan, for that great question, and Mr. Kini for the answer. Let's see if Andres' audio works now, and if not, he has sent the question to the chat. So let's see if he can ask it, and if not, I'll read it out for him.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Andres?
Yes,
we can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. It's truly an honor to have the opportunity to listen to you. I am from Colombia, and I will work with young people to promote medium-sized companies through research. The question is how to motivate young people to be interested in sustainable development. What can be the most effective tool? Thanks.
Great question. I think that for me, what made me convinced about sustainability is, as a young person, I used to visit, or my parents took me to, and then later I went on my own to visit wildlife sanctuaries, forests, mountains, rivers. I spent a lot of time in nature, and I started to love nature. To me, the most powerful motivator for anyone to want to make a difference to the planet is when you experience nature firsthand. And to me, the best experience of nature was experiencing it with someone who was an expert, who knew about the forest. And I'll give an example. When I visited the Amazon with my children, we had a guide with us who explained to us every single plant we were seeing, every insect, every mushroom, and how they were all connected to each other, and telling stories. So imagine if you were to walk into a library and you didn't know how to read. You would look around and say, yeah, nice, nothing interesting. But imagine now if someone taught you to read, or someone picked up a book and started reading to you and explaining to you what's in that book, the library would come to life. Now imagine if you go to nature, if you go to a forest and you go with someone who explains to you what each tree, what each plant does, your love for nature, your appreciation of nature will go up dramatically. So that's, I think, once you make people fall in love with nature, and then you tell them, hey, this nature that you love is under threat, right? That will make them motivated to do something. So if you are struggling with the problem of motivating people to do something about sustainability, organize a trip. And you're in Ecuador, I think you said?
Colombia.
You're in Colombia?
Yeah, Colombia.
Yeah, I am from Colombia, yeah.
You're from Colombia, right? So, I mean, you have so much beautiful nature in Colombia. Just organize a trip and take with you some naturalists and take a bunch of youngsters and make them fall in love with your country.
It's a great answer. Thanks for the response. Well.
Thank you. That's amazing. I wondered if Sam, you wanted to say anything and share, if you can hear.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much. Like, I've been enjoying the whole conversation all through today, and I'm just really grateful that I'm actually part of this wonderful conversation. And then just to, I will ask my question, but just to portray a point when he said, if you want to make someone fall in love with nature, just let them experience it. Let's take them to those things and let them see it. Because that is actually how I fell in love with nature as well. And then my question is about sustainability, because I know there has been a whole lot of conception about sustainability. And then looking at recycling, which is what you explained. My major question is, does recycling tackle the issue of sustainability? Does recycling actually promote sustainability? Because these are thoughts that has actually been with me for months and years now about recycling, about the carbon footprint in the process of recycling. Okay. Recycling a particular plastic or recycling a particular object. So I want to know, does recycling actually promote sustainability, or is something that is more like a greenwashing exercise towards promoting sustainability? That's my question.
Thank you, Sam. That's a great question. I'm gonna tell you right up front. Recycling is not a solution to the planet. Recycling is Band-Aid. The planet needs surgery. Our civilization needs surgery. Recycling is simply a Band-Aid. So what recycling does is it just reduces our impact on the environment. It does not eliminate it. And recycling, as I said earlier, is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The best solution is to figure out how, and since recycling typically in the context in which we are talking about is usually with regard to packaging or to a certain kind of material, there are some materials that are very easy and valuable to recycle, right? And I'll give an example. Very rare metals like lithium or cobalt or something, which are not rare, but not valuable metals. If we can extract them from batteries and recycle them, it does become a significant benefit to the environment. An example is aluminum, right? Aluminum, when extracted from the earth as bauxite and then smelted and converted into aluminum ingots, uses up a lot of energy. There's a lot of land use for extracting the bauxite. Recycling aluminum is a really good solution. It's sustainable. Recycling plastic is not as good. It's better than using virgin fossil fuel to make virgin plastic, but it's not as good as avoiding plastic to begin with. Okay, Similarly, recycling aluminum is not as good as avoiding aluminum to begin with. How do you avoid that? An example in daily terms, every one of us on this call use shampoos and detergents and things like that, right? Well, today, if you buy a detergent from a store, if it's in liquid form, you get a big package full of detergent liquid. Well, there's a simple solution to avoid that packaging. You can buy concentrated detergents, either in the form of a concentrated liquid or small tablets that come with minimal packaging. And the same quantity of detergent can come with 1/100th of the packaging. You don't need to recycle that packaging anymore. So your question is very valid. First, figure out how to refuse consumption. So refuse to consume anything. Where you can't refuse, try to reduce. So reduce the amount of packaging or products we consume. Where you can't reduce, then reuse. Try to reuse. Then recycling is, I would say, the second last option. And the last option is, of course, discard safely into landfill.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then just another question: is there any need for upcycling? Because upcycling comes in as an option in promoting sustainability.
So upcycling. Yeah, so upcycling is typically the term used for converting a material from one use into a higher value use. That's very, very rare. And when it does happen, usually the end use market for the upcycled material is smaller than the original material use. Because if it was a larger market, if there was a larger number of consumers for the upcycled material, then the original material would never make it to the first use. It would end up in the upcycled use. So upcycling is a solution, but it can only be a small part of a bigger solution set. And I can give examples of it, but not on this call. Happy to have a follow-up call on that.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. I think, well, I think I speak for many of us here when I say that this interesting conversation is really changing our perspective on what is an effective solution and how to apply an effective solution depending on where you are. So I will go ahead and read out the question that was put on the chat, I'm pretty sure by Drisha. I think she's not feeling very well, so I'll read it out for her unless she wants to read it herself, whatever you prefer, Drisha.
Go ahead, Anna, read it.
Okay, so it says, you very well understand the market of plastic, bottled drinks, and bottled water. How difficult do you think it is to reverse it, use other materials like glass? And can companies actually make it happen in the coming years, or is it costly to make it happen in the coming decades? I think talking about what you added as we've spoken, I think in the cases where the best option is to change, is it feasible to change? Will companies actually do it?
So Drisha, I know that you're based in Delhi. And so since you're based in Delhi, I don't know if you're aware that you can buy a carbonated soft drink in returnable glass containers, reusable, refillable, returnable glass containers, right? And when I was running Coca-Cola for India, we used to sell 1 billion of those a year, 1 billion containers in returnable, reusable glass. And I know that, Anna, you're in Mexico, so you also have that in Mexico, right? The price of that returnable, reusable glass was 50% the price of plastic. It was half the price. Despite that, the volume, and as a company at Coca-Cola, we had 50 factories that could do that. But consumers kept switching away from the refillable, reusable glass to plastic because they wanted the convenience, the throwaway convenience of plastic. We subsidized the glass. We had much higher effort in recovering, washing, cleaning, and then putting it back out in the market. And we wanted to promote it, but consumers kept moving to plastic. So to your question, Drisha, companies can only take the horse to the water, but they can't make it drink, right? So we can only take consumers to the point where we offer a choice of various kinds of packages to consumers, and we can price them so that We entice consumers to choose the better, more sustainable packaging. But if consumers tell us that, look, I don't have the time, the energy, or the care for the environment to choose a more sustainable package, even if it's cheaper, right? Because I want, convenience, then companies can't make that change. Consumers have to make that change. And unfortunately, and this addresses the next question in this chat, right? Yeah. What do you say to people who don't believe in the need to make the change and do something, right? You cannot preach to people. You cannot preach to people. You can't change somebody's opinion if they believe life is perfect and I don't need to make a change, right? Or, yeah, there are problems in the world, but it's not my job to fix it. It's somebody else's job to fix it. And the answer is, as I said earlier, the change has to come from within. And the change that's going to come from within, it's going to come from experiences that people have, lived experiences. You can't show somebody a video and say, oh, look, the polar bears are dying because of, climate change, and expect them to say, oh, I'm going to stop driving a car and I'll take public transport instead. That never happens. What happens is people go from, I don't know and I don't care, to I know and I don't care, to I know and I care. And then finally, I know I care and I'll do something about it, right? You have to take them through that journey. And that journey begins first by making people understand and know about the planet. I'll give a small example. As a student, I set up this thing called the Nature Club Society in my school. Our school was very close to the zoo in Delhi. So I organized field trips from the school for groups of students to the zoo. The initial bunch of students that came only because it was during school hours and we got a 1 hour break to go to the zoo. And they said, oh, we're getting out of school, we're going to go to the zoo. But when we went to the zoo, I would talk about the animals and explain, which ones are endangered and why, and so on and so forth. And even if I converted, 5 out of the 50 that came for that trip, I believe I made a difference. So find simple, easy ways for you to get those people that you want to make change, right? And make them go through an experience that changes the way they think and experience this planet. You'll find much bigger success than arguments, debates, videos, whatever. None of that's going to work.
Wow, thank you. That's really amazing.
Thank you so much. I really like that answer because it's so true how sometimes we can read about something, but once we are there and we see nature happening, for example, something that happened to me recently is that a couple of years ago, I read about the population decline of monarch butterflies that migrate to the state of Mexico. And I read about the decline of the butterflies, and I got really sad, but it wasn't until I think it was a month ago that I went to the butterfly sanctuary. And I thought there were millions of butterflies, but I thought, hey, this is only 10% of what used to be. And it made me realize, like, this is a bigger issue, Once you see it, like, firsthand, it's easier for people to get involved. Thank you so much for that answer. We do have time for 1 or 2 questions more. So if anyone else would like to ask, feel free to raise your hand. Oh, Sam, go ahead.
Sam, go. Yeah. Thank you. Sam, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, Sam.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I just want to ask about greenwashing. What do you think about greenwashing in regards to promoting sustainable development? Because a whole lot of since there is this race to net zero, since there is race to net zero for companies and countries, there have been some promises from industries, especially in the fashion industry, about promoting recycling curtains and the likes. I just want to know about your own conception and your own perspective about the term greenwashing, and if it's something you think is being used as a substitute for the word sustainable.
So your voice is not entirely clear. So what I understand from you is, what is my response to companies greenwashing, especially in the fashion industry? you know, the term greenwashing, I think, is often unfairly used, because you need to understand that every company has a responsibility to its shareholders, to its consumers, to its employees, and every company has, as long as they are staying within the limits of the law, has every right to promote their products and every right to buy and sell things as they see fit. Now, many companies are being forced to make announcements around sustainability. Some are doing it willingly out of choice, and many are doing it because they're being forced by stakeholders and by people like you who want them to make a change. A few of those companies that are making big announcements are also paying lip service to it. They're not actually making real change. They're paying lip service to it and using all kinds of techniques and methods to say, oh yeah, look, we're doing something. Now, I believe that trend is going to change. The reason it's going to change is more and more transparency is coming, more and more measurements and metric systems. There are over 100 platforms around the world that are measuring, tracking, and monitoring the actual performance of companies on more and more standardized methodologies. And a classic example is climate change. Now there's worldwide agreement on Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 climate emissions. There's worldwide agreement on greenhouse gas equivalent emissions. There's now life cycle analysis tools that make it very easy to measure the exact footprint of every single activity that you do. In the next 5 years, it'll be as easy for consumers and stakeholders to track a company's environmental footprint as it is today to track their financial footprint. So you can read a balance sheet and you can read how much money a company is making and where that money is going. You'll be able to see in the next 5 to 10 years, and I don't know exact time frame, but in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be publicly visible, where you can go to a website of a company and you can see third-party audited numbers on how much greenhouse gas they've emitted, how that has trended over time, how they are on track or not on track to meet the net zero commitments. By 2030, any company that's not on board with this will not be able to survive. It'll almost become impossible for companies in the next 10 years to avoid taking ownership and responsibility for their environmental footprint. So I'm an optimist. I know that today there's frustration that there are companies that are paying lip service. There's frustration that there's a lot of misinformation in the market. It's like, before there was standard, generally agreed accounting principles, right? Companies used to say anything they wanted about their financials and get away with it. Well, today you can't. You'd no longer be able to trade on the stock exchange. 10 years from now, the same thing's going to happen. So watch this space.
Thank you so much.
I see 2 hands up.
Maybe if you could type in the chat, Ivan, you want to say, and then Drisha, if you can type, and we'll pick up the question, please. Thank you.
So this is going to be really, really fast. I saw that the Ubuntu platform is in English, and I was wondering if you are planning to expand it to other languages, because that's an amazing platform, and I think it will generate a greater impact if it can be reachable for so many people.
Thank you, Ivan. That is something that we had on in our pipeline. Unfortunately, it costs money, and we don't have the resources. So we will eventually get there. But I believe now Google Translate has become reasonably good, so you can translate a website into any language. And I'd love to get your feedback on how Google Translate translates our website, and if it's a good enough substitute.
Great question, Ivan. And actually, just as a quick note, there's a really good online translator that is called DeepL that really considers context and more technical information and stuff. So, and they have an API. I don't know how you call it. So it's easy to use that one.
Anna, please send me a link to that. That would be interesting for us. Thank you.
For sure. Yeah. And Drisha was going to type a question here on the chat, but
Yeah.
as she sends it over, I wanted to thank you so much for your time. I know we are reaching the end of the hour we have with
Yeah.
you, but I think this has been an amazing session. I think we can tell by the participation of all the youth leaders who are here with us that they've learned a lot, including me. It's been really interesting, and I'll hand it over
Yeah.
to Ash to help us close.
Absolutely. I just want to. I'm sorry.
I'm the letter of the meeting, very later.
Thank you, Jean-Felix. Thank you for joining. And I just, yeah, there's a recording. So I just want to say I echo everybody's sentiments, and I love the way that you started and ended kind of with a loop, because you brought up the fact that the only real way for us to make change, promote change, inspire change, and you're a great inspiration for us, really, is by providing firsthand exposure and experience and lived reality to an appreciation for nature, and also rewarding companies, as long as it doesn't sort of penalize consumers a great deal, by patronizing those companies and rewarding them by being customers. And I think that I think is key for us, for us to be able to promote and amplify an understanding and inspire more change within the community of young people across the world. And our goal is to reach the 1.8 billion young people in the world by giving them the kind of appreciation exposure that is necessary for them to first love and then be willing to act. And I think that's so key. So thank you. I know that you speak from your own experience. It comes across in everything that you say. And I just want to say how amazing it's been to be able to hear you here. And I know that we have a number of young people from different parts of the world here, from Cameroon, from Nigeria, from Colombia, so Latin America, the US, all over. And I know we didn't have a chance to talk too much about some of the projects they're leading, but I'd love an opportunity for us to meet again, if you would agree, so that we can talk a little bit more about what they're doing. And I know you'll have a lot of insights, and this will have implication for what they're doing with other young people, and so we can spread the word and inspire many more. But I just want to convey gratitude on behalf of the entire family, and say that before we go, it would be amazing if everybody could switch their cameras on and we could get a picture, please. Thank you. And Drisha's message is so valuable. I appreciate how you club behavior change and the personal connection. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your experience and your love for nature, because it comes across in everything that you say. And we want to do lots more of this with the youth of the world. And we look to you for your love and light. And thank you once again for your time. And hey, Billy. Hey, Ale, I don't know if you can get your camera on. Jean-Felix. Hermano Kevin, thank you. So whoever can, and I am gonna send a big heart, lots of love, and so much gratitude. Really, thank you. I'm gonna get this picture and I'm gonna write to you and share it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Familia Pop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
smiling, everybody. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Take
Bye
care.
bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. It's amazing to have everybody here. I don't know if you've got a few minutes for those who have the time, but I just thought since we didn't have our call today and we've got everybody, it'll be amazing to just get a chance to say hello to everyone real fast.